Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bounds. On today's show, we have a dispatch from Spain's biggest and best contemporary art fair, Arco Madrid. Every year, the not-so-beautiful exhibition space, Ifema Madrid, plays host to a rich variety of galleries, curatorial presentations, and many very beautiful artworks. It's here that the art worlds of old Europe and Latin America are brought together, with the rest of the globe invited to the party too, of course. And it isn't just for those all-important sales, but the event enables exchanges between art-minded folks from around the world, often aided by a glass of Rioja. This show has just returned from that city after a rainy but inspirational trip, and here we've brought together some of the best of the conversations that we enjoyed from curators, gallerists and Arco's leadership. So do stay tuned, those interviews are up ahead right here on Monocle on Culture. First up, Maribel Lopez is the woman behind Arco Madrid. As the fair's director, she's tasked with ensuring that it lives up to a tip-top standard every year, striking the right balance between old and newer galleries and their geographical spreads. Plus, Maribel ensures the curated presentations are excitingly ambitious and then connecting those to the fair and the wider city and its local art institutions. It's a tall order and one that Maribel executes with great charm. I caught up with her and began by asking how the fair attracts international collectors.
Well, I think Arco Madrid, it's an old fair, 44 years, and also somehow an institution. And I think one of the things we do is we push the galleries, we try to help them to present things that are not so well known, that when collectors come, they know they're going to discover something, they're going to have space and time to look at artworks. So we try to offer something different, another kind of experience, and also, we are very welcoming people, and we try the fair to also have that spirit, and all that is working, I would say.
And how do you do that? Because we came here last year, we had a great time, you were such a wonderful interview, and you gave us a very warm welcome. How do you do that? Because there is a big mix of the curatorial and the commercial, like any art fair. How do you do that at Arco Madrid? Because it does feel like you are embraced into a warm bosom here, Maribel, by the city, but by the fair itself. And we are, let's face it, we are not necessarily in beautiful surroundings here. We're in a huge hangar, but it does feel like it's got a very good atmosphere. So how do you ensure or encourage that to happen?
There are many layers to that. First, of course, the galleries. We encourage the galleries to take challenges. We also put some rules, so galleries that are under 40 square meters cannot present more than 4 artists. This is one of the rules. Then we offer them spaces for the presentation of more challenging commercial projects by a really symbolic price. We do that. Then we make also a better price when they take another kind of challenge as presenting to artists. So first, by helping the galleries to take that next step, in terms of challenge, and that makes another kind of a space. But then also with the architecture, we put a lot of effort in the architecture of the common areas because, as you said, this is a hangar. The total of the fair is 38,000 square meters, which is a lot of walking, a lot of grey, the floor and the ceiling. So we collaborate with young architects to develop what we call the common areas, the forum and the restaurants, etc., the guest lounge. But this is normally a VIP lounge at other fairs. It's a guest lounge for us.
We'll see you there.
Yeah. And that is done by Mesura. That is a very interesting architect office in Barcelona. And also the special subject of the year is also done by another team of architects. So what we try is that the art experience is very focused, is very frontal, but then somehow the social experience also connects with the way we are in this city, We like to be with friends, we go to bars, so we have to reproduce that somehow. If not, everybody will go to town. But then it's true that also the institutions in Madrid are very close to the fair. They all understand the fair as part of their ecosystem, so we connect deeply. And there are performance tomorrow in Reina Sofia with one of the artists from Amazonas, also in Casa Encendida, exhibitions by collectors. So yeah, the whole city also embraces.
Each year you kind of slightly shuffle your deck of cards with the galleries that are showing here. You've got some new entries this year. At what point down the line, sort of in terms of last year, the year before, are you and your committee choosing galleries, thinking about kind of, as I say, shuffling the pack and getting some new names on some of those booths?
It's really complicated. I think this is one of the hardest.
That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, I know. That's so this fair, if we talk about this fair in this way, you say you are warm, you are welcome. That's really important for us. So the galleries that have been participating in this fair for 30 years are part of Arco, but every year they have to prove they deserve to be at Arco. And when the fair goes better and better, other galleries who were visiting, because we know all the galleries who are visiting this year, so we are hoping for a very complicated committee next year. So all these galleries who were visiting apply this year. We have 9 galleries that were never at the fair, and I think 25 new entries in total. These new entries are people who didn't come for a few years. COVID, of course, shook things a bit. So this year was very, very difficult because these new galleries, no committee can say no to them. And we have to take care of our scene because Arco cannot forget that it's a Spanish international art fair. So the solution for that was increase the fair in 9 galleries, which is not much, but it is. And that was to protect a bit also those people who are so faithful that were a bit in challenge, no? People who does not do so many art fairs, is not visible internationally, but it's also the flavor of this fair. And then something else we do is invite curators, so they bring us new galleries, new ideas, etc. That's very important to kind of shuffle these cards.
That was Arco Madrid director Maribel Lopez. Now, Arco Madrid is famed for bringing together Latin America and Europe, but the specific links between Eastern Europe and the Latin world are less shouted about. One gallery exploring and indeed forging those links, however, is the Kiev and Miami-based Voloshin Gallery. I caught up with co-founders Max and Julia Voloshin to find out more.
We're now based in Miami, and there's a lot of immigrants from Cuba, Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, and mostly of people, they are very supportive to Ukrainians, and some of them told us many stories. For example, one of my friends, he said that I am Argentinian Ukrainians because my grandparents were from Ukraine and immigrated 100 years ago, and for me it was a surprise, and I checked it in internet, I googled it, that it was a big diaspora in Argentina. In the beginning of 20th century, more than 100,000 Ukrainians moved to Argentina for a better life. Also in Brazil, also in Venezuela, and also in Cuba. And we find also many similar themes that Latin American artists and Eastern European, Ukrainian working on.
You're talking about a kind of undercurrent of history, kind of secret history or history from 100 years ago, where people have now live in their lives. Are similar themes to that, this undercurrent of history, explored in some of the works around us with these South American artists, but immigrant artists?
Yeah, we find a lot of common things in historical background of artists, what they are discovering in their works. For example, post-colonial, because Ukraine, for example, was under pressure of Russia, of Russian Empire, like a colony. Yes. Latin American countries, they have their own history of colonial and imperialistic past. And we find a lot of common ground.
The themes you're talking about, obviously none more true. I mean, having your Voloshin Gallery is written up there. You've got 2 date lines, Kiev and Miami. Again, this is, people look twice, or people do a double take when they see what the 2 places that your gallery is from. What is the reality of having a gallery that's probably more based in Miami than Kiev at the moment? But what is the reality of the relationship you have with both of those places at the moment?
Yeah, we have strong relationship, it's our roots from Ukraine, and for us it's important to keep our program in Ukraine. And maybe if you know that our story a little bit, that when war started, we convert our gallery in Ukraine is a bomb shelter. It's a shelter for artists, and some of our artists used to live at the gallery. But then in 2023 we reopened our space with our program. We bring, first show was international show with Ukrainian and Eastern European artists at the gallery, and it was like a statement that we will resist and we will be, our country will resist, and nobody can invade our country, our culture, appropriate our culture. Is very important for us and for our artists and for people, for community in Ukraine. And also that move that we open a space in the United States, in Miami, was also to have new opportunities to represent our artists to wider audience, and to kind of expand our program, to build this dialogue between, as I told you, like America, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. And we find it like that's kind of interesting.
And we're at Arco Madrid, which has always been the oldest art fair that's been a bridge between mainland Europe and South America, really, because of its Spanish language and all the rest of it. Obviously, you're now in the city with Art Basel Miami, which is a big deal in December. How does this fair feel for you guys? Because this kind of has got some deep roots in European culture. It's the 44th year that this particular fair is happening. How would you describe the vibe and the conversations you've had with some other gallerists and dealers and artists and curators here?
We find it's our third year at the Arco, and we find it really good and very high quality. A lot of galleries from Latin America, local Spanish and European galleries, and we can see a lot of good and high quality presentation, but the type of art presented is really different from what we can see, for example, at Basel in Basel or Basel Miami, and a lot of new discoveries. I literally take a lot of pictures because I did not see something before on other fairs.
That was Julia and Max Voloshin from Kiev and Miami-based Voloshin Gallery. While wandering through the fair, some slightly rascally works caught my eye on the walls of the Joey Ramon Gallery's booth. These were by the hand of Bernat Davio, a Spanish painter armed with both a deft hand and a keen sense of humour. Davio picks up paintings from second-hand shops and then adds to them, and the one that struck me was of a dull picaresque, a kind of country scene of days gone by. Davio, however, has painted a subtle addition, namely a burning Tesla Model S flaming centre stage. The gallery's co-owner, Kiki Petratou, told me more about Davio and his work.
This work belongs to the series called Escapism. So escapism is a broad theme, but we can say it's escapism from reality, escapism from the contemporary reality, political, social, etc. But also escapism from your role as an artist. So you have to have fun, you have to, to destroy, but also to create. And this is what this work refers to. So in this particular piece we are looking at, it's like a found painting that the artist painted over. So he painted a Tesla car and he put it on fire for a lot of reasons, very obvious ones.
I don't get it. Explain it to me. You said there was no politics involved.
No, I said escape from political reality or any kind of reality. And that's kind of the point in this one, in this painting. It's a Tesla car that he put on fire.
The background, and we should say, you said that this is a kind of found painting, and this is kind of thing that you would get in a garage sale or a yard sale.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's from 1910 or something, this particular piece, that nobody wanted. So actually the artist takes it and appropriates it or reuses it.
Which is what we call upcycling, I believe.
Upcycling, you can call it that.
And we should say that the background image that Bernat's painted, that it's a kind of bucolic rural scene in middle Europe somewhere, perhaps in Germany, and there's a castle and a traveller sitting by the roadside. All is calm and quiet except for the aforementioned burning metaphor in the middle of the painting.
Exactly. I find it very intriguing because, we see this guy sitting there, I don't know, having lunch, and then he observes, he doesn't care what happens around him. Also another comment on reality, no? Everything happens and flashes in front of our eyes, but do we pay attention? I don't know, maybe we do.
And next to that is another work by Bernat. What do we see in front of us here, Kiki?
So here we see again a very idyllic image of a sunset, like a sea scene with a unicorn. A tiny gesture, like with a little unicorn floating in the middle of the whole thing. Again, I found a painting with a small intervention by the artist.
And this again has got a kind of slightly Caspar David Friedrich quality to it, but a little bit more of a what you might call banal take on that. Do you remember those images of the Taliban when they stole all the pedlos?
Yes.
And this is what this reminds me of. Is there any sense in that?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if the artist thought of that, but yeah, of course. And I mean, these works are really open to interpretation, no? Like, I don't know, like you see this little unicorn and it takes you somewhere, no? Like it takes you beyond what we see in the painting itself, actually.
These are two beautiful moments of escapism. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Bernat's work. Who is he? Where is he from? And is this very much in his kind of ballpark as an artist?
Well, Bernat Daviu is an artist from Barcelona, Catalonia. Basically, he works with a lot of different media. Painting is one of them, but usually he activates the paintings with performances and with video. And in this case, it's an art fair, so we decided to show these works in this format. But usually, like his questions are going around the role of the artist in the world and how the artist concentrates to make a work of art amidst all the distractions around him. And also, if you see the rest of the works with the shadows, this refers exactly to that. For example, how as an artist you are standing in front of a canvas, empty canvas, and then you may or may not have inspiration at that moment, and you start noticing all the distractions around, like a shadow that falls on your canvas from somewhere else. So he decides to actually create a work of art based on this kind of distractions, a shadow of a plant that he had in his studio. And then, of course, that refers also to history of art, because we see a lot of flowers like this one, the blue one, that is like, how do we call this plant? It represents
like a monstera.
Yeah, that represents kind of purity, like Virgin Mary paintings, that we see this a lot. So it's coming and going, like between the role of the artist in this world, but also through history of art.
So by looking at the thing, we cast our own shadow on it and we see something different to the intention of the artist, something like that.
Yes.
By the way, we're looking at it's a kind of portrait, kind of sized painting and shaped canvas. I guess it's kind of tropical green, and we see, a tropical plant sort of leaf that might be in the artist's studio at home or wherever he works, cast upon it. And earlier today, with your colleague Hans, we were talking about the work that's over behind us now, and I thought it was like a take on an Yves Klein picture. It might be that, but it's got this shadow on it.
Yes, exactly. Of course, this is like a very specific blue. So, of course, it refers to Yves Klein as well, but then to other things as well because of the plant on it. So it's not only a reference to one thing, to a lot of things together.
And generally, I mean, this is lovely to be walked through some of the works by one of the artists on your booth here, Kiki. How curatorial do you get when you plan a booth for Arco and for other art fairs? Because there's a real mixture of the commercial and the curatorial, and how far you think things need to be explained and how obvious things should be, I suppose.
I mean, in our case, they are always very curatorial. We treat the booth in the same exact way as we would treat the gallery space or any other space that we would do an exhibition. Because, we don't see ourselves in a very commercial manner. You know, we of course it's amazing, it's great if you sell everything, but that's not the first point that we are thinking about. We want to make a very exciting booth, like something that will travel people, you know, like literally and figuratively speaking. We pay too much attention to the concepts, not only to the objects apart.
Kiki Petratou there from Rotterdam's Joey Ramone Gallery. And finally, on today's show, as well as selling those works in the booths, Arco Madrid also has strong curatorial presentations designed to delight and challenge visitors in new ways. Maria Wills Londoño is the co-curator of this year's Arco project called Wamatize, Ideas for an Amazofuturism. It's an intriguing show that offers a multi-dimensional approach to the Amazonian territory through theory, fiction, visual arts and poetry, tapping into ancestral knowledge and looking to the future. I caught up with Maria to discuss her curation and began by asking her to describe the meaning of Wamatize.
Wamatize comes, our whole idea of bringing this to Madrid was taking, or more than taking, because here we have to be very careful with words, right? It's working with, making a dialogue, creating bridges with communities and their myths of origin. So I co-created this with Denilson Baniwa, who's an amazing artist, curator, activist from the Baniwa peoples of Brazil. And we came up with this idea of working with the myths of origin from different communities in the Amazon, one of them being this one of Wamatize that talks about, and it's beautiful because this is oral, like oral traditions that have been depicted in some ways about an anaconda, a boa snake that came down the Amazon River, naming sacred places of the community, of the Tucano community, because this is a myth from the Tucano community. A bit of what we're trying to propose here is a lot of things have to be renamed in art, because there's been a lot of very arbitrary ways of understanding art from the
So there's one thing is Spanish names or English names, another thing is kind of derogatory names and nicknames and diminutive names, I suppose, right?
Yes, but I mean the notion of the language, and there's so many different languages, and we were talking about this briefly with another artist, because many artists come from the Amazon, has to do with the way you name things and translations, and also the impossibility to translate, you know. But here, in any case, we're trying to question notions as culture, as art history, linear thought, and through Ametisse, the possibility of creating new narratives for other futures. So renaming things, for example. So here we have different materialities. We have things that would be thought of as popular art or handcrafts and are not, because the authors consider themselves artists, you know, in the sense that we have understood it in the Western kind of hegemonic thought. So it's a chance to create bridges and dialogues, I think, mainly.
And you mentioned Amazofuturism, and I guess part of your answer there was about the ideas of Amazofuturism. When I think of Afrofuturism, I think of Sun Ra, the Sun Ra Orchestra, and I think of kind of like pretty stuff that's far out, reaching far back into time, but reaching far into the future. Is that the same idea for Amazofuturism? Does it have a musical element? Is it all visual arts? Is it spirituality? What is it?
That's beautiful. I love that you come up with Sun Ra, and actually Amazofuturism has a lot to do with non-human entities, with the ideas of spirituality. I truly believe that, and mostly after the pandemic, people have thought of going beyond rationality and more into their bodies and experiences, transhuman experiences. And so Amazofuturism is proposing kind of a perspective through these myths of origin that are so diverse, that talk about non-human or animal-human entities, about rituals, about circular time, to be present. After, as I was saying, after the pandemics, we're in search of, like, there's callings, no?
We are more attuned, or we're more ready for the mythical, the spiritual, the strange. Maybe there are parts of us that have been laid dormant, and they're coming back to us now, maybe.
Definitely. I mean, I think that art also is a little bit tired, and there was a notion that some people might say I'm being anachronic, but Walter Benjamin used to talk about the aura in art, right? And I think that art and spaces, especially like fairs that are cold, commercial. So, for example, one of the artists, Olinda Silvano, she's a leader of a collective of women in urban Peru because she was displaced, and she has the Cantagallo community. She was singing her painting. So what you're saying is completely true. Some of these paintings come from singing, from music, from rituals. And sometimes people question this as being art, and I think we don't have the answers. These are just possible ideas for speculations that we're coming with in different artists. Also artists that go through trances with, for example, ayahuasca and paint their visions, no? Like such as the collective of Macu or the visions of Canny that I was telling you about, Olinda, or Carlos Hakanamihoy. They come from different peoples, and what I've thought is it's better to talk about peoples of the Amazon instead of tribes or instead of notions that are really Western, but they have been depicting, like in the Western way, because some of them use canvases, but what goes on in animist and non-traditional kind of visions, like vision is not only what you believe you see, but there's other ways of understanding what seeing is.
This is great. I can't wait to come, if there is one, to the opening party for this particular section of the fair. It would be a right old time. In reading around some of the themes of this section, Maria, I noticed something called the Institute for Post-Natural Studies, which sounds apocryphal and post-apocalyptic, but maybe it's about the regrowth of what happens after we're all gone. But you should tell me, really, what it is and what it pertains to.
It's an amazing team. They work from the transdisciplinary perspective, and they were our teammates, our collaborators in the design of the pavilion, which is all like thinking about zero impact, like all these walls are exactly the way that this recycled wood is resold, like in order for it to be reused, in another fair or in Arco next, and no paint. We don't have any toxic materials. They also were with us making the forum and the catalog. There's a beautiful catalog for Wametise. And I think the idea of post-natural, which is amazing, is going beyond these bipolar or, like isolating nature regarding the human, because I think part of the thought that we're proposing in that actually people from the Amazon. I have to say that this exhibition is not only of indigenous peoples, it's also about people that have lived, that created from the Amazon with communities and creating really from an ethical perspective with the Amazon, but that have thought about this idea of putting in crisis the notion of nature, because nature is something that can be exploited, or the extractive perspective, and thinking of it as this post-natural, post-human perspective, we're interrelated, such as something that the communities have been teaching us. It's like we're one.
That's really interesting. It's wonderful to hear, because I wanted to ask you about beauty. You've talked about the fact that lots of these artists, we might look at it as folk art from a Western perspective, and you'll say, no, these people regard themselves as artists like Michelangelo. This is the same thing. And what about notions of beauty? We look around us, there are things that are beautiful, there are things that might be slightly challenging to a Western perspective. We're being looked over by some tasty-looking characters in straw from Lima. But yeah, tell me about notions of beauty, how you see it, how some of these artists see it, and perhaps a couple of the things we're looking at here.
Well, these ones that we see here, I have to say that they're from the Ticuna peoples, and they're from Nereida Lopez. Lima is the gallery. So we have been very careful in naming the peoples, like the communities where the artists come from. This is an amazing woman, Nereida Lopez, who's part of an artist community. But I have to say, regarding your question, coming back to beauty is challenged, and I think this is a subject that has been coming up for a while. I mean, we're not introducing the thematic of the Amazon or of art from the margins, right? Just to mention something that amazingly happened last year was the Venice Biennale, where Adriano Pedrosa put in like the circuit in this notion, and there was a lot of, people were uncomfortable in a way because
we're all foreigners here was the title of it, right?
Foreigners everywhere, but the idea of these works and these amazing, for example, we have, how do you say canastos? Baskets from Dawa. She considers herself, even though they would seem as crafts, those are labels that have been created by art history in a way, and I think that bringing the Amazon to the circuit enables us to question our notions of beauty and of high art. There's been these ideas about high culture and low and popular art or primitive art, and I think they're rough also because seeing it from a commercial point of view, when all these people, like also the galleries and the persons have been working with these artists, with Dawa, for example, we were talking with the gallery, and the promoter that was working with her came up to her and said, no, this has way more value. How much time does it take you to do this? What about the concept? And it takes way more time than a work of art by a conceptual artist that just and then at the same time, the hand, I think people are thinking back and trying to, technology is complex, even though here there's a lot of works that are about technology, people are going back to things that have these doing handcrafts, threading, and everything that is done by hand is a technology.
I also wondered if you had to get into the ayahuasca state of mind yourself for some of these things, if you've done the research.
Well, that I've been working with this subject matter. As a matter of fact, I did a show in Colombia when I was in an institution there that I directed called Sowing Doubt, because I think doubt is the word, just like doubt and being able to experiment and to create a dialogue with, not for, not speaking for, but with. I haven't done, for example, if you're asking me if I have done ayahuasca no, I have spent a lot of time in the Amazon, but I haven't felt that where I come from, and I come from Colombia, but Colombia is not the Amazon, hasn't put me in that path of doing the ayahuasca, but I've been close to the peoples from the Amazon, creating dialogue, which is very, very important for me. There's a lot of spirituality behind each one of the works. Some of them are healers. Aikobo, for example, who does these calendars. Art is healing in a way, yes. I think that it has healed me more than the art I used to talk about before.
That was Maria Wills Londoño, and that is all for this week and our reporting from Madrid. Arco's Portuguese sister, Arco Lisboa, is also well worth a visit, and that event starts in Lisbon on May the 29th. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chongu, and Steph also edits the show. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bounds, thank you for tuning in.